Hello everyone, my name is Sean Hendricks. I am the co-host along with Chris Chung of the CAVE conference, which is happening in December in Las Vegas. I have with me here one of our speakers for CAVE. This is Kenny Roy, and Kenny will be teaching two of the classes on day 3 of CAVE. And the whole idea of this series is I wanted to spend a little bit of time interviewing some of the speakers just to give people a sense of what's happening in the classes, get a better idea of what they're going to get. So Kenny, why don't we start off by getting a little more information about your background. What is it that got you into the animation world, and what are you up to these days?
Well, hi there. Thanks for having me first off. It was always going to be. It was kind of destined that I was going to get into animation. I think kind of because I was surrounded by it, growing up. My older brother was a programmer, and obviously he got into games and wanted to make games, and so he was doing that through high school. My father was an editor, and so his career was spent mostly working with Disney. So it was always, for my birthday, he was always bringing home like a bag of DVD screeners from Disney films, and he actually started working with Disney and Pixar when they started making DVDs together. So I think I was just immersed in it, and eventually it was just going to happen, and it did. So I learned the skills to make CG for my older brother's video game, and was just in love with animation. I just made the two things. I just basically married them together and got into the animation biz.
Now I know you've got a lot of things going on in your life these days. Founder and running a animation company. You've recently been working on an animated short. You're also doing teaching. How do you compartmentalize all these things into one place? How do you actually find the energy to do it all?
You know what? Animation, I always believe that animation is kind of like pure energy, right? Because it's the movement that goes into, the characters that we see on screen. And so kind of part of that, I might be getting a little philosophical, but I think energy begets energy. So the more that I do, the more energy I have to do more. So I'm very excited about all the things I have on my plate. Yes, I run Arconics Animation Studios, which is where I am right now. I have 3 books that are in publish right now: How to Cheat in Maya, the Sam's Teach Yourself Maya in 24 Hours series, as well as a new book called Finish Your Film, which is coming out from Focal Press in January. And as well as that, I do a lot of teaching. I go to conferences, obviously, like CAVE, which I'm very excited about. And I don't know, I just feel like the more I do, the more energy I have for the rest of it. So I'm just going to keep on, taking every opportunity that comes my way, which is another piece of advice that I give to animators, which is to jump at all opportunities, because it's always going to lead you somewhere, maybe where you don't expect, but it's going to be great.
Now, I know one of the things that I found fascinating when I first met you was the process you went through to get started on The Littlest Painter and that animated short. And you started a Kickstarter to get funding to be able to take the time off from work and do this project. How did you focus on this Kickstarter? What were some of the things you did?
Well, the Kickstarter, I obviously did a lot of research, and I found some guides as to how to make your Kickstarter really successful. One of the things that they said to do was to have a big launch event. And so I didn't have really anything that I thought would draw anybody to a launch event besides animating. So I set up something called the 24-hour animation marathon, and it's exactly what it sounds like. I stayed up for 24 hours from noon one day to noon the next, and it was on the first day of funding. And people got to watch me go through all of the trials and tribulations of animating a shot. And I finished the shot. It was a 13-second long shot from The Little Painter, and it's the first shot that's animated in the film. And basically, I just had a huge cheering section that was just pushing me along and kept me up all night. And it was very successful, because the first day I had almost a third of my funding totally complete. So it was a really successful campaign. And I actually have all of my Kickstarter backers. These are all their names, so that when I'm doing a webcast, they can see that their name is on the wall, and then I'm thanking them basically every day. This is my wallpaper. Thank you.
Now, you somehow managed to find the time to come and do CAVE at Autodesk University this year, not only with one class, but you're doing 2 classes. 2 whole classes. And let's talk a little bit about those classes, give people an idea what they are. The first one you're working on is Copy and Paste Your Universe, creating and implementing modular 3D environments.
Yeah.
What made you decide to do a class like this?
Well, it's a really interesting course for me because I've just encountered so many times in doing projects for clients at the studio, in coaching people, students doing their own short films, and in working on my short format things, that creating environments that feel full-bodied, that feel rich and full, like we're used to seeing and that audience expect to see, is very difficult, especially for a small team or for an individual. And we have a lot of shortcuts that can actually get us to a much more full, a much more like sort of fully realized world that people aren't really taking advantage of. And it only requires a few changes in your thought process and your workflow when you're creating these environments to take advantage of these things. And these are tips that you can basically apply to any package that you're using, and just be basically, you know, hit the ground running creating modular environments that don't feel modular, that don't feel copy-paste, but actually make your world feel like it's actually a living, breathing universe.
Now, the other class you're doing is one that sounds a little more up your alley for the way you describe yourself as being an animator, which is Super Cycle Walkthrough 101, the best methods and biggest pitfalls when creating cycles. What's the focus in this class?
The focus of this class is obviously cycles. I've obviously worked a lot with animators that are beginning their careers and are beginning their training, and cycles are one of the first things that we do. We actually don't normally get taught how to do it totally right. One thing that is normally a little bit off with a cycle that you create, if you're just eyeballing it, is all of the spatial relationships that are within the body. Are they actually occurring correctly? We can eyeball a cycle and it can look great, and it normally will hold up on screen or in a game. But if those spatial relationships aren't totally right, then you're just asking for problems down the road. So I teach you a workflow how you can be sure, you can be absolutely positive even, that you're creating that walk cycle that has, or actually a cycle with anything. It could be a run cycle or a fly cycle, but a cycle that has that spatial relationship worked out perfectly beforehand to not bite you later. And one thing you can do to see if this is maybe a course that you'd like to take is you can take one of your cycles that you've worked on already. It doesn't matter if it's treadmill or if it's walking forward in space, in Z space. Just take that walk cycle and go to frame like 10,000 on your timeline. If you go to frame 10,000 on your timeline and that walk cycle is copied, right, so that those keys are repeating, if you go to frame 10,000 and the arms are like all over the place, or the legs are left back at home, or there's anything wrong with it, if it doesn't look exactly like the walk cycle between frames like 1 and 12, however long your walk cycle is, then you've got a little bit of a spatial problem, and I show you how to correct that. So this is a course, again, that is not only software agnostic, it also is for people of all skill levels. If you're a new animator and you don't know how to make a cycle, then this course will kind of teach you. If you're a pro animator and you've been doing cycles a long time, but you test your cycle like I just mentioned and you see that problem, then this will be just a refresher for you, but it's a good one to have to add to your workflow.
Perfect. So I'd like to thank you for coming out for the interview. Everyone who wants to come to Cave, I highly recommend you check out his classes. Kenny's got said 2 classes. They're both on day 3 of Cave, so you'll be coming out for the 3-day package if you want to do his classes. For those of you who happen to stumble on this video and aren't quite sure what Cave is, well, I recommend you go to autodeskcave.com and you'll see the graphics.
I second that recommendation.
Yeah, good. And I hope every other speaker seconds that recommendation.
Yeah.
At this event, we are completely focused on the world of artists and designers and inspiration. We've got speakers like Jay Schuster, Lauren Lanning, Neil Gaiman, Sid Mead. We've got John Cleese coming out to talk about his process. You can see we're not just looking at CG artists, we're looking at people that are artists in general from a number of fields. So we get a lot of inspiration. So I highly recommend you check it out. Again, autodeskcave.com. And again, I'd like to thank Kenny for coming out, and we'll talk to all of you later.
My pleasure. Thank you.